together, let's do it. So that's what I wanted to provide today, John. Just a sense of working together and working hard on our kuleana.
Thank you. And just for those in the public that may not know, each of the board members have been working very hard because we have very limited staff. So unlike most boards, we have a working board member. So I appreciate everything that all of the board members are doing to help move us forward. So with that, what we're going to do with public comments at the Noinoy.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Because we can hardly hear you in this room.
Okay.
I'd like to fix that before we go forward.
All right. Can you hear me better?
Quality.
Can you hear me better now?
Can you keep talking?
My usual nonsense, or you want me to say something that makes sense?
I can see. Hold on. Can you guys hear? Can you hear? Okay, yeah, I guess everybody can hear, just me. I'm deaf today.
That makes sense.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, makes sense is extra. Here is one thing, makes sense is extra, sorry. So what I'm gonna do with public testimony is that at the suggestion of the Attorney General, we're gonna take public testimony on each. When we come to an item, I'm gonna ask if anyone wants to have public testimony. The public testimony will be, as is traditional, limited to 3 minutes, and to express whatever you will want us to understand or hear. So anyway, I'm going to move to the approval of the minutes. Are there any changes or amendments to the minutes of the October 12th, 2023 meeting? If not, if we could get a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. For the chair's report, I wanted to report two things. As all of you know, we've posted the position for an executive director of the Mauna Kea Stewardship and Oversight Authority. To date, we've received 8 applications. Paul and his committee are reviewing those applications to determine whether or not people meet the minimum qualifications, and also trying to kind of whittle down the list to allow us to proceed. Based upon a meeting we've had with the Ways and Means Committee yesterday, we have been asked to sort of expedite that process. So Paul, I know will be moving forward with the process. So I don't know if there's anything you want to add, Paul, just to that.
Yeah, it's the usual, no rush, but hurry up.
Okay.
But we're going to get started. The committee is ready. I sent out all the applications that came in, and I also emailed our group the qualifications as posted on the job posting so that we can match those. And Poena and I had a great meeting with Lisa Araki to get us through the process portion, step by step yesterday. Took us about 45 minutes, but we had a really good meeting, and it clarified a lot of the steps we have to take to make things right. So we're ready to move forward. And I just sent a couple emails out to Laura and Pomai so we can chat either this week or next week and start the ball rolling.
Great, thanks. Okay. I wanted next item that I wanted to share is more of my personal observations about some of the challenges that we're having. Yesterday, we were asked by some of the members of the Ways and Means Committee, you know, what exactly we're doing, and there's a sense of urgency on from their standpoint that we become more active. And what I shared with them was some of the challenges that portions of the Sunshine Law is creating. You know, as I mentioned earlier, we have a working board And because of that working board, we are undertaking, in standing up a new state agency, we are undertaking matters that usually board members do not have to undertake, because usually you have staff that can undertake that. But because of the limitation of only being able to speak to one board member at a time, that is creating operational challenges and also challenges in moving more expeditiously as we would all want to happen, because we all know we have a 5-year time frame for transition. So that's one of the operational challenges and difficulty. I don't think we're having any problems, and I can accept the idea that we should agendize everything and everything should be posted 6 days in advance. I also agree that there should be no discussions about predetermining votes. I believe that any public meeting that we have, that we should be transparent and have full and complete discussions about any of the issues. But just the idea that somehow we cannot have more than discussion with one other member is impeding us in terms of this specific idea of standing up the state agency. I've also heard from other members of the board that, in terms of trying to bring people together and talk through some of the issues that we have, that the portion of the Sunshine Law that only allows us to speak to one other member at a time may be culturally inappropriate, and that is not a way to address some of the more controversial issues that we have going forward. So I just wanted to raise that as my personal observations about some of the challenges that we're having with Sunshine Law, that is impeding our ability to move as quickly and as thoroughly, actually, as I think we all would like. So I just raised that. I don't know if anyone else has any comments, but raise that as a personal observation. Okay, anyone have any comments? If not, we'll just move on to the next issue. The next issue deals with governance. So is there anyone that wanted to speak to the governance issue? This is the issue, and just to clarify, because we had an inquiry about this as from a member of the public. The law states, the law that created us states that for the next 5 years, we as the Mauna Kea Authority have to co-manage the Mauna with the University of Hawaii. So what we're trying to do is to try to create some structure and some processes around that co-management. I think intentionally the law was somewhat vague in terms of how that co-management works. So what we've been doing, so that people understand, is that we've met with the chair of the Board of Regents and the Hawaii Island representative to kind of discuss, like, how are we going to co-manage. What I've told the Mauna Kea, the Center for Mauna Kea Stewardship, the university, is that we as authority do not intend to get involved in the day-to-day operations. So you should continue to grade the road, continue to operate halepuaku, do all of the things that are day-to-day. What we would expect to be included on are some of the decisions or any projects that you decide to undertake on the Mauna. And, we in prior meetings have talked about the A-level type projects, which are more notification, B-level type projects, which are actually more would require permitting, and C-level projects, which would be major projects such as TMT. We expect to be notified about the A-level projects. The B-level projects and the C-level projects, we expect to have input into decision-making about the direction that we go forward. So what we presented or are presenting with you today and asking for your approval is that if in the event there is disagreement between us and the university about how to proceed on a B-level or C-level project, what is a process that we should be using to try to kind of arrive at some kind of consensus? And what we've come up with is with this idea that we would have a working group consisting of 2 regents and also 2 members of the authority to meet and try to hammer out what exactly the disagreement is, what the different alternatives is, and hopefully come to a consensus about how we proceed. We have intentionally kept this at a very high level because this is new to all of us, new to us, new to the university. And if we try to, our feeling, both us and the regents, if we try to pencil out a really specific process that we would be engaged in, that might take us, the 5 years. I'm being facetious, but it may take us way longer. So let's have a very high level process involved, and we'll work our way through it. Nothing of this is set in stone, but let's have at least a initial process that would allow us to meet and try to work through any disagreement that we have. We haven't had any of those yet, but in case we do, this is the first thing that would happen is that we'd convene the regents and the 2 members of the authority to discuss things. That group, that working group, would be free to invite others to participate that would be relevant. For example, I've talked to the chair of the DLNR. There may be instances where DLNR or BLNR, their input and their kuleana would be kind of part of the discussion. We would invite them to be part of the discussion. There may be other members of the Center for Mauna Kea Stewardship that would have to invite, in addition to Greg. But that would all be part of the discretion that would lay within this working group, the regents and ourselves. So again, intentionally, we're trying to be very fluid and really just create at least an initial process that we would start discussing any type of disagreement. So I open it up for, we've submitted or given to you a description of what this co-management working group would look like. Just so you know, next meeting, I'm going to present with you another transition management working group, which would be more trying to do what Ben had described before, inventory of things that have to be transferred and how they be transferred, the timing of that. So this is not that group. Okay, this is more when we have disagreements about where we should be proceeding, how we address that with the university. So anyway, I open it up to any questions or comments that anyone might have. Ben, you want to add anything?
I think that we are required by the Act 255 to set up some type of structure of co-management. And this is an attempt to address that legal requirement under Act 255 of the authority and the university. And although it doesn't itself make decisions on the merits or substance of the issue at this time, it does, at least at its inception, form a method of decision-making that is acceptable to the university and to the authority in terms of operational management issues that might come before it. And as we understand it, there may be some that are pretty heavy issues that might be coming to this committee soon. So time is really of the essence to form this committee and get it started.
I failed to thank Ben. Ben was the one who did a lot of the heavy lifting to kind of draft this overall. So mahalo to Ben for this. So Auntie Nono, she was part of the meeting with the regents. I don't know if you want to add anything.
Sorry. Okay, now you can hear me. I don't have anything particular to add. I think we're just trying to establish a framework for how decisions get made. And then as it comes up, if we feel that it doesn't quite work the way we anticipate it working, then we'd have to come and revisit the process.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments by anyone?
John, I was just gonna add to what you're saying about keeping it high level and support that idea because as you started saying, really for the day-to-day operations, we continue to rely on CMS to conduct those operations. And dealing with it at a high level means the sort of the chain of command, how things flow down to the staff on the Mauna that work for CMS currently. It keeps it nice and clear because you deal with any alignment issues up top versus down at the worker level. So I think that's a good idea.
I think an additional aspect of this is that because there is a lot of uncertainty with regard to moving forward on decision making for interim operational issues, I think we recognize, all of us, that there may be heightened anxiety levels amongst the staff and others who are involved on the university side and CMS that we want to at least allay and address by virtue of setting up this decision-making structure. Anyway.
So to follow up on Rich's and Ben's comments, what I've told CMS and I also told various other groups is that we respect the organization in the sense that CMS organization, so that any decisions that are made by this working group would be transmitted through Greg. We would not, as an authority, ever reach past Greg and try to ask someone within CMS to do something that has not been filtered through Greg. So we respect the organizational structure as currently existing. So no one should be receiving in CMS, other than Greg, directions from us. So just so that's clear, so just to make sure that people understand that they're concerned about receiving conflicting directions from the university or the authority should not happen, because everything should be transmitted and communicated through Greg. And unless there's agreement, there's nothing for Greg to communicate. Okay. Any questions? Any comments? If not, if I could get a motion to approve.
Hey, John.
Yes.
John, sorry, just to clarify, are you asking the members of the public too, whether they'd like to testify?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You're correct. So, yeah, are there any members of the public that would want to testify on this particular subject matter? We have received written testimony from others who may choose not to orally testify, and those testimonies, and at some point I'll tell you who we received testimonies from. We've accepted all of the written testimonies and have distributed the testimonies to the members of authority. So I might as well say right now that we received written input from Regina Gregory, Jim Albertini, Shannon Rudolph, I think, wants to orally testify, Leslie McKee, Sylvia Dolina, C. Burkhart, D. Green, Maki Morinoy, Nani Okalani Blackman. So we've received written testimony from all of these individuals, and that written testimony has been circulated to members of the authority this morning. So is there anyone that would like to orally testify on this particular issue regarding this Mauna Kea Stewardship and Oversight Authority co-management working group?
So I need one's in person first. I got one in person here, and then I got the other two in the waiting room.
Okay, so why don't we why don't we go with the in-person first? So, if you could just tell us your name, that would be helpful, and then, we'll give you the 3 minutes. Yeah,
Aloha, my name is Ricky Torres Pastana. My friends call me Ricky. I'm glad that you're having this hearing and you're recording it, because it's an exciting time to be a Ganapan. This is more proof that you fellas are contractors conscripting a genocide. And international lawyers are watching, heavily watching, even more now since what happened to Lahaina. And I'm glad this is more proof of what we need. The elephant in the room is gonna bust out real soon. And you fellas, check on international laws and what you're doing. It's genocide. And I fought for America. I was a combat veteran in Vietnam. And when I came home, I saw the corruption of this place. It is rotten, and you fellas are really, really exposing the stink. So mahalo for being here. And ola nakanaka ikolu aloha. May whoever you touch heal.
mahalo, Reggie, and mahalo for your service.
Okay, I'm gonna let them in one by one. I think we have Shannon Rudolph first.
Okay, Shannon, we seem to be having some problem with, connection to your audio. Let's come back, Shannon. Hopefully you can hear. Can we come? We'll come. Oh, no, here you are. Okay, we got you now. You're on mute, Shannon, if you're saying something. Hey, Shannon, if you can hear me, you're on mute. There you go. We still can't hear if you're saying something.
Am I supposed to be unmuted?
Yeah, no, you can, please, go ahead.
This
Yeah, go ahead.
is a public testimony.
Yes, if you're testifying on the working group, we're soliciting for something right now on the working group that we
So
suggest.
I'd like. My name is Shannon Rudolph.
You're kind of breaking up a lot, Shannon.
The audio's bad on my end here. I don't know what the problem is. I don't think it's me. So I'll just say a quick yes to both the agenda items for the National or Historic what is it? National Historic Registration for Mauna Kea. I'm in support of that, and also for a whatever with UHH.
So let me just, because of the difficulties, what I understood, Shannon wanted to express her support both for the co-management working group as well as something coming up on the traditional cultural property designation. And I think, Shannon, I think that's what you said. I don't know if you still are able to speak, if you want to explain any further about your support.
I just think they're both great. I've been following the issue for about 40 years.
Thank you. Thanks, Shannon. Hopefully we'll try to figure out if it's, yeah, we'll try to figure out if we have any problems on our end as we move forward, as we take public testimony to make sure that, things are okay. All right, thanks, Shannon. So, Joanna, if you have somebody else. Okay, Shanti, we see you on the screen. You're muted, so if you would like to submit testimony, we would be appreciative. Okay, we got you. You're on mute right now. Yeah, we're ready. Yeah, there you go.
Aloha, Nityanandam. My name is Maluhia, or Shanti. I am a diplomat of Kailasa and a fourth-generation Hilo girl. In my submissions in email with many links regarding the actual legal situationship Hawaii is in, I recommend all to go through the links as well as the slide presentation or PDF that I put together stating that Hawaii Kingdom is in martial law and this is an occupation. Occupation is war. All contracts are null and void because treaties are contracts. Broken treaties are broken contracts. So any kind of commerce or those things should not be taking place in the legal state of affairs Hawaii is actually in. And that's my recommendation. Please go through the links. It also includes Keanu size material, OFH material, all of these different factions within Hawaiian Kingdom and all of their efforts for decades, in some cases generations of their research to handle this situationship very peacefully, like the Queen Liliuokalani did, because it's a misunderstanding. Thus, she put Hawaii Kingdom in martial law and not to pick up arms. And so we are still in that process of sorting through the legalities very peacefully. And once successful, for the second time, Hawaii Kingdom will have regained its independence without bloodshed. Thank you.
Mahalo. Thank you for your testimony, and all of your the links that you provided have been submitted to the members of the authority. And mahalo.
Thank you very much. Mahalo.
So, Anna, do we have anyone else that wants to testify, on this particular issue?
No, I don't believe so.
All right, so at this point, I would ask for a motion to accept the description of the co-management working group that has been circulated and posted.
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Okay.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion, questions, comments anyone wants to make? If not, I'll ask for all those in favor, either raise your right hand or raise either hand. Or say yes, please. Thank you. So passed unanimously. Thank you. The next thing that we wanted to do is, based upon our last meeting, we know that there's been a nomination of Mauna Kea for designation as a traditional cultural property. So in order to educate members of the authority as well as the general public, we've asked for a presentation. And I'm not exactly sure who the exact person is, and we'll have them introduce themselves, but to give us a presentation about what the nomination entails and the process that is going to be put forward in terms of this particular nomination. So I've asked them to present, but to keep the presentation to 15 minutes. So that would be hopefully maybe 10 minutes of presentation and then at least 5 minutes of questions that individuals might have about the presentation. So I've asked them to present, but to keep the presentation to 15 minutes. So that would be hopefully maybe 10 minutes of presentation and then at least 5 minutes of questions that individuals might have about the presentation. So I've asked them to present, but to keep the presentation to 15 minutes. How are we getting that?
So that would be hopefully maybe 10 minutes of presentation and then at least 5 minutes of questions that individuals might have about the presentation. So
is there a reason why I'm getting that?
Is somebody watching the live stream still? Okay, there we go.
All right. So I'm not sure who's going to start off on the presentation. They've provided us with a PowerPoint that we've circulated to members of the authority and posted. So I'm not exactly sure. Is Kupu, are you going to lead off for us?
Yes, I will be. Puena, is it possible that I could get capabilities to share screen, please?
Yeah, you should be okay.
It says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Sorry, give me just a second. I thought I allowed it.
No, no worries.
So let me just thank you guys for coming and presenting to us and kind of informing us first of all.
No, mahalo for giving us this opportunity. It's really awesome anytime we're able to provide any information to the public. So we really mahalo you folks for carving out some time in your really busy agenda and work schedules to let us do this presentation. We'll try to keep it within the 15 minutes.
All right, thank you.
Okay, try now.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Oops. All right, aloha kako, and mahalo again for having us here. My name is Ku'upua Kiuna, and I'm the legal specialist for Huliawa Pa'a. Before I get started on today's presentation, I did just want to mention and introduce some of our team that's also here. So we have our Huliawa Pa'a Executive Director, Kelly Ueoka, our Deputy Executive Director, Dominique Cordy, and our Historic Preservation Specialist, Rachel Herman. Today I'll be presenting on Mauna Kea and its nomination to the Hawaii Register of Historic Places and the National Register of Historic Places as a traditional cultural property and a district. So this is one of the first historic preservation documents that really pulls together Hawaiian traditions, primary resources, and archival resources, and mobilizes them to discuss cultural significance and historic preservation framework for Mauna Kea. So our approach to this was to gather information and resources from the abundance of materials that exist in the public record, the archives, cultural resources, in lieu of conducting consultation. And in doing so, we compiled a holistic and comprehensive record of resources that includes historical and archival records, government materials, translated records, mo'olelo ka'au and oli, expert testimony, and scholarly materials. So before we get started, I do want to introduce a little bit our organization, Huliawa Pa'a, and the role that we have in the Mauna Kea TCP nomination. So we're a nonprofit organization founded in 2012 that includes Hawaiian cultural practitioners and degreed professionals. And our main purpose is to educate and empower the people of Hawaii on the stewardship of Hawaii's wahikupuna, or our ancestral places. Kahea and Mauna Kea Nainoho are the official nominators for Mauna Kea's inclusion on the Hawaiian National Registers of Historic Places, and Huliawa Pa'a was contracted on behalf of Kahea and Mauna Kea Nainoho as resource and information specialists in wahikupuna stewardship and historic preservation to research and complete the nomination. So in addition to our lead drafters and researchers for the nomination, Julio Pa'a staff and our board of directors were intimately involved at all stages of the nominating drafting process. We also worked extensively with Uncle Kipa and Auntie Onana Mali, who are amazing ethnographers here, and Auntie Daviana McGregor, whose wealth of ancestral Hawaiian knowledge and resources on historical uses of Mauna Kea were critical to our research and drafting of the nomination. So really getting into it, these are the two official lists that recognize historic properties at the state and federal levels. The table here communicates the differences and similarities between the two historic registers and serves to help better understand the functions of both. So at the state level, anyone can nominate a historic property for entry to the Hawaii Register of Historic Places. The Hawaii Historic Places Review Board will then review the nomination and decide whether or not to include the historic property on the Hawaii Register. If the review board accepts the nomination and enters the property into the Hawaii Register, the nomination can then be resubmitted for the review board's consideration and shippo nomination to the National Register. The information here provides an overview of the standard guidance for listing a historic property on the National Register. The entity evaluated must be a tangible property, so a district, a site, building, structure, or object. And while the intangible resources entwined with the tangible resources can be what makes the property significant, it has to be clear that the tangible property itself is eligible. In order to be eligible for inclusion, a property must also have integrity. And it's important to note that TCP, or Traditional Cultural Property Guidance, modifies National Register guidance. It doesn't stand alone as a separate set of guidance. So for example, for TCPs to have integrity, the property must have an integral relationship to traditional cultural practices or beliefs that give the property significance, and the condition of the property must be intact in a way that the relevant relationships that exist between the property and the group that considers the property significant survives. These are the criteria of significance that all historic properties nominated for either the Hawaii or National Registers of Historic Places must meet or possess. So while there are 4 criteria, a historic property only needs to meet or possess at least one of these criteria. And at the state level, there are an additional 2 requirements that the historic property must meet in addition to at least one of the criteria that you see here. As previously stated, TCP guidance modifies the standard National Register guidance, and this is how the criteria for significance for TCPs really differs from the standard criteria of significance. If you have any questions later on, we can come back to this, but because we provided the presentation beforehand, we have the idea that you folks are able to look at this already. So this is a snapshot of Hawaii's criteria of significance, and the highlighted portions are the 2 additional criteria that the property nominated to the Hawaii Register must meet in addition to or instead of any of the 4 federal criteria of significance, which are listed above. These are types of historic properties and also types of TCPs that can be entered for inclusion on the Hawaii and the National Registers of Historic Places. And again, districts, sites, buildings, structures, or objects are how historic properties and TCPs can be categorized. But what's important to note here is that TCPs are by definition historic properties, but not all historic properties are TCPs. The National Park Service defines traditional cultural properties as places associated with the cultural practices or beliefs of a living community that are both rooted in a community's history and important to maintaining its continued cultural identity. So the pictures you see on this slide are of sacred mountains that have either been listed on the National Register as TCPs or are eligible and pending inclusion. This timeline here is important because it shows the precedence for inclusion of a selection of sacred mountains as historic properties and traditional cultural properties on the National Register. So previous sacred mountains and their associated cultural landscapes that secured National Register listing as historic properties and TCPs include the Kuchama nomination, the Spirit Mountain Traditional Cultural Property, and the pending San Francisco Peaks nomination. So important to note here is nominating a mountain that a community considers sacred to the National Register as both a historic property and a TCP is not a new concept. The nomination of Mauna Kea to the Hawaii Register as a Hawaiian historic property and to the National Register as a TCP and district aligns directly with national precedent for the National Register of Historic Places and the listing of sacred mountains and their associated cultural landscapes as historic properties and TCPs. Oops. Okay. So important to note here, this is how Mauna Kea meets all the criteria and actually exceeds all criteria for significance requirements, including the 2 state criteria. So as previously mentioned, historic properties being nominated to the National Register only need to meet one of the criteria of significance to be considered significant, while historic properties being nominated to the Hawaii Register need to meet at least one of the 4 criteria, or have an environmental impact, or significantly contribute to the understanding and enjoyment of the history and culture of Hawaii and the Pacific. For criterion A, a property must satisfy that, or a property can satisfy criterion A for its association with events that have made a significant contribution to the broad patterns of our history. So Mauna Kea really meets this criteria because of its role that it plays in the cosmology of Hawaiians and the ongoing community's historically rooted beliefs, customs, and practices. Mauna Kea is eligible for listing under criterion B because it's associated with paramount gods that feature in Hawaiian cultural traditions, as well as with the ali'i who really recognize and reinforce their connections to the gods in Mauna Kea. Mauna Kea is eligible for listing under criterion C through the distinctive ways Hawaiian sourced and manufactured stone tools, installed ahu and trails, and established temples that all uniquely exemplify master craftsmanship in their type, period, and method of construction. Equally important here are the open spaces that Hawaiians elected not to modify. To be considered significant under criterion D, a property must be associated with human activity and be critical for understanding a site's historic environment. So as previously expressed in the justification for why Mauna Kea meets criteria A through C, Mauna Kea has historically served as a necessary landscape for a number of human activities. Additionally, Mauna Kea's association with Hawaiian culture and history critically informs how we understand Hawaii's pre- and post-contact history, and more importantly, how we interact with Mauna Kea as a historic, ancestral, and sacred environment. And lastly, in satisfaction of the threshold criteria for Hawaii Register listing, Mauna Kea significantly enhances the environmental quality of Hawaii, and its preservation significantly contributes to the understanding and enjoyment of the history and culture of Hawaii. The preservation of Mauna Kea enhances the environmental quality of Hawaii due to its role as a major watershed and its role in the hydrology cycle, its unique and distinguished viewscapes, and its biocultural landscape. Mauna Kea additionally has yielded critical information about the pre- and post-contact history of Hawaii and is instrumental to the evolution of Hawaiian knowledge, cultivation, and practices. So its preservation is as a place of continued cultural practice and knowledge generation, contributes significantly to the further understanding and enjoyment of the history and culture of Hawaii and the Pacific. All of the reasons that make Mauna Kea eligible for inclusion as a TCP equally qualifies the mountain as a historic district. And this information is relevant to understand because it shows how Mauna Kea exceeds all eligibility requirements to be listed as a Hawaiian historic property on the Hawaii Register and as a TCP and historic district on the National Register. So this slide really provides information on how the chosen boundary is justified by NPS standards and how it makes cultural sense. So for the purposes of the nomination, the boundary of Mauna Kea as a historic property, TCP, and district is public lands within roughly 6,500 AMSL. It's really important to note here that one of the requirements for boundary justifications as defined by the NPS is that it must make cultural sense. The roughly 6,500-foot boundary makes cultural sense because it encompasses the Wauakua, that summit region, and a large portion of the Aina Mauna, both spaces where traditional cultural practices occur and important cultural resources are found that make Mauna Kea significant to Native Hawaiians. Including the entirety of Mauna Kea summit in the roughly 6,500-foot boundary is important because this portion of Mauna Kea is necessary and is a crucial factor to the continued cultural practices and beliefs of a people. Additionally, this elevation is inclusive of many of the summits of the smaller pu'u surrounding the summit itself. Although the roughly 6,500-foot boundary does not account for the boundlessness of Mauna Kea, nor the totality of the traditional and continued cultural uses of the mountain, its significance, and its connection with the contiguous biocultural landscape, it does include the Wauakua and large portion of the Aina Mauna that inherently contribute to Mauna Kea's significance, integrity, and qualifying criteria as a traditional cultural property. Lastly, the boundary does not diminish the integrity of the relationship between Hawaiians and the contiguous landscape of Mauna Kea, nor is the integrity of the condition of the mountain in its entirety diminished. This timeline here is really important because it shows the precedence of official recognition by the state of Hawaii that Mauna Kea and components of Mauna Kea qualify as TCPs, and that this nomination for Mauna Kea to be listed as a Hawaiian historical property, historic district, and a TCP is not unfounded or unsupported by the state. So the takeaway from this is that nominating Mauna Kea to the Hawaii National Registers is not a new concept for the state of Hawaii. And as we've already seen, a precedent has been set for sacred mountains to be included as historic properties and TCPs on the National Register. So this nomination is similar to those that have previously been accepted. And so that, coupled with the 20+ years of official recognition by the state, proves that this nomination has been officially recognized as qualifying as a TCP by the state. So this slide depicts a general table of effects of listing for state and county agencies. So TCP designation provides more information at the beginning of compliance processes, and generally there will be more information and clear understanding at the beginning of any future state and federal compliance processes triggered by a project-specific undertaking. It's important to note that the rights, benefits, and responsibilities are determined by a number of contextual factors beyond the purview of this informational sheet. So for further inquiry, you should definitely consult legal counsel and a historic preservation specialist to understand any laws, rules, or regulations applicable in specific places and circumstances. Generally, entering a property into the Hawaii Register will provide SHPD the opportunity to comment on proposed changes or alterations to the property prior to their occurrence, require a reasonable opportunity for SHPD to review and comment on any permits that affect the historic property, and it'll also trigger the Section 106 Historic Preservation Compliance Review for federal undertakings on the historic property. Listing on the National Register will allow owners of the historic property to request federal agency review under Section 106 to address impacts of proposed actions that could have a negative impact on their historic property, and would also require federal agencies to consider impacts of their actions on properties listed on the National Register and properties eligible for listing on the National Register. So while the previous slide discussed the effects of listing a historic property for state and county agencies under state and federal law, this will really focus on the benefits of listing. The main benefit of listing on the Hawaii National Registers for state and county agencies is that listing provides them with a previously established process for historic preservation compliance processes. They'll have way more information at the forefront of what's there that puts them ahead in the federal processes they have to work through because that knowledge is already established. And for planning and management purposes, it's helpful because you don't have to do a historic preservation eligibility and significance assessment at the state or federal level because, again, they're already established. Listing also benefits cultural impact assessment requirements under state law and environmental review because you already have something whose cultural significance is established and previously discussed. So both state and federal historic preservation processes require project proponents to weigh the impacts of any proposed projects on historic sites. This includes previously identified historic properties and newly identified historic properties, as well as the historic properties that are eligible for listing on the National Register. The main takeaway here is that establishing a TCP and its eligibility gives project proponents more information to work with and an earlier understanding of the compliance that will be required. Therefore, listing Mauna Kea as a TCP and district really provides a more accurate way to understand and engage with the Mauna as a historic property and regulatory compliance. These are some references and links that you can access through the PDF that we sent you folks earlier. And then this is also a list of references that we use throughout this presentation that, again, have some links that you can access as well. Again, mahalo, you folks, for your time and your patience and giving us the space to really discuss this important nomination with you folks. Please feel free to ask any questions. I may pull in some of our Huleopa'a staff to answer some of those as well. Mahalo.
Any questions, members? I had a question. So my question is, in looking at what happens after it's designated, it seems to me that the state and federal agencies have comment ability, but do they have decision-making ability as it relates to what happens on the Mauna? You see the distinction I'm drawing between comments and decision making.
I'm going to pull Rachel in as our historic preservation specialist, but I do believe their authority would extend to commenting within the purview of the historic preservation compliance regime, but I'll let Rachel expand on that a little more.
Mahalo ku'u, great job. Aloha kako, my name is Rachel Herman. I'm a historic preservation specialist with Julio Pa'a. So to speak to your question, the State Historic Preservation Division is going to, depending on the undertaking, the State Historic Preservation Division would be the one making decisions and making determinations, but it's all dependent on the undertaking. As you folks have acknowledged, the Mauna Kea Stewardship authority has not been established yet, so we can't speak to that at this juncture.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how the relationship between the Mauna Kea authority would be with either the federal and state jurisdictions, right? For example, can they, if we decide to go one way, can they make a decision that would be in opposition to whatever we decide?
So if you mean if both state and federal compliance processes are triggered?
Yeah, and let's say that they give comments. I'm trying to figure out what the jurisdiction of the various groups would be vis-a-vis the authority, right? Because one thing I'm trying to do with authority is to make sure that we have true decision-making ability as an authority, but can that authority or that decision-making be overridden by either the state or the federal if there's a designation?
I can't speak to that right now because your authority isn't established. I'm sorry. There's too many factors that would influence it, so I don't feel confident giving you an accurate answer or an idea.
Oh, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions?
I have a question, John.
Yep, go ahead.
Hi, aloha everybody. Mahalo for your presentation. I hope it enlightens us a little bit about what the process is. I didn't hear whether you said there was a time frame involved in when you anticipate this process going through or reaching its conclusion. So if you can enlighten us with that, I would appreciate that. And then I also just wanted to note that your 6,500 foot level of designation for the Mauna happens to be the same designation that the original Mauna Kea working group a couple years ago outlined for our hopes at the time as how Mauna could be treated. So I just wanted to make that comment. So I appreciate that you came up with the same designation area. But yeah, if you can answer my first question, if you have any idea of the time frame involved, because as I think what John is alluding to is, we're on a track dictated by the legislature and by law. And so we're trying to stay within the law to meet all of those demands of us. And then we know there are external pressures as well. And then this adds yet another level. And so we're a little unclear. How does this all fit together, right? And when does it trigger what we have to do, or does it? And so, yeah, thank you.
Mahalo nui. As far as the process goes for the listing onto the Hawaii Register, we are on the agenda for the Historic Review Board for next week, next week, Friday, 11/17. I believe you can join that meeting via Zoom as well. It's open to the public. So the review board will be hearing the nomination, will be presenting there again, and then the review board will deliberate on whether or not to push the nomination through to the Hawaii Register. They could also decide to move the matter to their next meeting, which wouldn't be until next year. So it really just relies on whether or not the review board feels that they have enough information on TCPs in general, and as well as on the nomination itself to make a decision next week, Friday. In the event that they do push the nomination through and accept it into the Hawaii Register, we can then have Kahea and Mauna Kea and Ainoho resubmit for consideration to the National Register, at which point the SHPO, so the SHPD administrator, would make that nomination to the National Register. So a lot of this just hinges on next week Friday's meeting. I can also share that Zoom link with Pua'ena to distribute to you folks as well if you'd like to attend. As far as the authority, or not authority, I should say, but the role of you folks in that meeting would be as part of the public, so you would be able to provide testimony at that time as well.
Other questions?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Okay. Seeing no other questions. Well, mahalo you guys again for your presentation. It was very helpful because at our last meeting, we lacked knowledge about exactly what you guys are doing. So we appreciate you guys coming and giving us detailed and widespread. Thank you.
Yep.
Mahalo.
Hey, John, sorry. Are you going to ask for public comment on this?
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Good thing. Okay. Pua'ena, do we have anyone that, in addition to the individuals that gave public comment, that want to publicly comment? Again, I emphasize that we did receive testimony, written testimony to support of the designation. But I just want to know if there's anyone that wants to speak on the issue.
I don't believe we have any in person, but it looks like I got a really late email from someone. They don't even have the Zoom link. Should I try and send them the Zoom link, or
No. We will circulate whatever email they submitted to us for consideration by the members of the authority. But I don't think it's a good practice for us to start in the middle of a meeting giving people Zoom links. So anyway, yeah, so let's circulate that information. And that is, do you have the name of that person so we can assure the person that their comments will be considered?
I'll respond to the email.
Oh, no. Can you just tell us who that person is?
Oh, the person's name is Ariel Murphy.
Okay, so we'll make sure that Ariel Murphy's written comments are submitted to members of the authority. So with that, mahalo to all of you for making a very thorough and comprehensive presentation. We appreciate that. Okay, aloha. Next item is finance. We don't have anything. We met with the Ways and Means Committee yesterday, but the issue of our budget did not really come up in that meeting. So I think we're still assured of the for at least the next fiscal year, which ends on June 30th. At this point, there's been no discussion about cutting back on our budget. With that, I know that Greg Chun is attending virtually today. So I've asked him to give us an operational update of matters that are being undertaken on the Mauna. Especially, I wanted him to give us an update on decommissioning. Greg, you're on mute, so I don't know if this Pua'ena has you on mute, or there you go. Great, go ahead.
Aloha, everyone. Nice to see you all again. Thanks for the time. I just have two items to update folks on. First item is the status of our two decommissioning projects. Let me pull up my notes here, please. Okay. The Caltech submillimeter observatory decommissioning has pretty much completed the removal of all the internal furniture fixtures and structures of the dome. And remove them off the Mauna. The only thing left is a portion of the support structure that held the actual mirror itself. A little more than half of that support structure has been disassembled and removed, and there's just a little bit more of that needs to be removed. Other than that, the remaining deconstruction work for the on the project is on hold until the spring, because it didn't make sense for them to start that work heading into the winter months. There are some remaining work that still needs to be done, specifically that will be done before the year. Specifically, Helco will be removing a transformer that is on the property. Hawaiian Tel needs to remove some of the communication lines, and all of that stuff will then need to be taken off the Mauna. Power has been cut to the dome, but not to the utility shed that is on the property as well. And power will continue to be provided there until Helco removes the transformer. As I said, the bulk of the internal removal of the internal fixtures and structures is completed. There's just a little bit more that needs to be done before they shut down for the winter. Before I go on to Hoku Kea, are there any questions regarding the Caltech submillimeter observatory? Okay. Regarding Hoku Kea, I can't remember. I think I reported at the last meeting that the project went out for bidding to contractors. The bids have been submitted and have been evaluated, and a selection has been awarded, was awarded last week. Our facilities and buildings group is currently finalizing the award and finalizing the contract with the contractor. The work will not, because we're entering into the winter months, the work will not start or commence until the spring. But we do want to make sure we get all of the contracts in place, the contract in place with the general contractor who's been awarded the contract. That project will be ready to go move come the spring. Any questions on Hoku Kea? Okay. The second matter that I had to update you folks on is something that we discussed with the Ways and Means Committee yesterday, and I've shared with you folks in the past. As you folks know, August 1st of this year, we submitted a letter both to the authority and to the land board chair, Chair Chang, regarding the status of current permits, leases, subleases, environmental reviews, etc. Essentially an inventory of the things that are currently held by the university, and which we need to determine how they will be either transferred, assigned, or otherwise to the authority. We are now involved in a much more, and that letter was an update of a previous letter we had sent in May of 2022 to then land board case. What we're doing now is a complete due diligence inventory of other property, equipment, licenses, vehicles, vendor contracts, intellectual property, etc. The sort of things that would normally need to be considered in the due diligence of any merger and acquisition type of transaction. So we are in the process of creating a database or databases that will be made available to the authority, so that you see what we have on hand as you determine what your how you're going to move forward with some of these things, or not. But we thought it would be very important that you folks had a complete inventory of all of that. We're working with about 164 item checklist that our team has put together. It is a major undertaking, but we feel it's really, really important that you folks have that information as you start to put your organization together and consider how you want to set yourselves up. So our target right now is to have this next phase, if you will, of our inventory at least in some kind of draft form by January. We're going to have to push to get to that point, but we want to make sure that once you folks have your staff, that kind of information will be available to them, so we can begin to have some discussions about how you folks plan to handle some of these things. So that's what we're working on now, and I can give you updates as we progress, but hopefully by January, as we're pushing for, we'll have something at least in draft form to provide you. There are numerous, as you might expect, vendor contracts, some of which are small and some of which are larger, that you folks may want to consider entering into similar contracts on your own when it comes time for that, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the purpose of this exercise. So we'll keep you updated, and as I said, try to get you folks at least a draft of what we have by January or sometime in January. So those are the two major operational updates that I had. Questions? Yes, Ben.
Greg, thanks for doing that. I think that's one of the more important cornerstones of the second working group, which is inventory of assets and liabilities. My question to you is, and I'm happy to hear that you guys are all well on the way to getting something ready by January. Will it have assets as well as the leases and other obligations that what I call liabilities that the university has?
Yeah,
owned by the university.
Yeah. So the major ones are all listed in those letters that we sent to the land board, and they are already available on Mauna Kea OCCL's website, Mauna Kea website. But there are other types of leases and permits that we hold too that are much smaller. Department of Health permit for the underground storage tanks, for example, things like that. So we're in the process of trying to ensure that we provide you folks a complete inventory of all of those kinds of things.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that you guys included assets as well, because those are all your vehicles, your equipment, and all that kind of stuff that naturally would return. Okay.
We are going to have to make a call, and we're not going to count every nut and bolt that our utility crews have, for example, but the big stuff for sure.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? We will be presenting to the authority next month a framework for what we call the transition working group, which would be specifically targeted at looking at the operational aspect of how this transfer has to go, as well as the inventory that they have. Again, once we get staffing, we're hoping that the staff will be more able to deal with some of these nuts and bolts issues. But just to get the process started, we're going to create another transitional working group to address these issues. All right. The second thing I just want to kind of let you guys know is that in the next meeting, I've asked Greg and his team to give us a report on their efforts during the past calendar year in terms of conservation. and also a separate report on what their educational outreach program has been engaged in to give us a fuller understanding of some of the other aspects that CMS is undertaking and has undertaken in the past year, so that we get a more broader understanding of exactly what they're doing. So I expect that Mr. Ye, Mr. Pelago will be presenting to us at our next meeting, so we can understand what they've been doing on these other two important aspects of CMS. But if there are other things that you want presentations on so that you have a better understanding of what they do, let me know, and we'll sure that Greg and his team will be able to kind of educate us about some of these things. Go ahead, Ben.
I think one of the other matters which maybe is more minor would be the university does issue, I think, licenses to the tour companies. Maybe just a brief summary of what that entails, how many vendors we have up there, how often, and the kind of income that the university may receive as a result of those licenses. I know that may be a little bit controversial, but I think we need to know that.
Yeah, and in fact, that issue is an issue that's going to be coming. The issue about renewal of those licenses is an issue that is soon coming to this board for consideration. So having that baseline information might be helpful before that issue comes before us. Yeah, Greg. So I don't know if you have any comments on that.
Yeah, no, as far as the revenues from the commercial tour operators, those have been included in all the financial briefings that we provided to certain members of the board, but we can certainly provide an overview to the whole board at a future meeting as well. And as Chair Komeiji indicated, we are looking at issuance of new permits and that process per our administrative rules that were adopted in 2020. And we want to, I've had some preliminary discussions with John about that already, and we need to have some conversations with the permittees, existing permittees, as well as the general public once we have decided how that process will work.
Okay, any other questions of Greg or requests for further information for our next meeting? So Jordan, do I have to take public comment on his?
Yeah, just for consistency, yeah, you should ask. Yeah.
So is there anyone that has signed up for discussion about the operational update from the Center for Mauna Kea Stewardship? None? Okay, thank you. At this point, I would ask for a motion for us, allow us to go into executive session to discuss three matters. One is that hearing from our attorney regarding the traditional cultural property potential designation. Secondly, status on the OHA versus state of Hawaii lawsuit. Thirdly, personnel matters. So if I could get a motion that.
So moved, John, Chair.
And your motion mirrors the language that was.
Yes, what you just said.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Raise your.
Was that Ben?
Yeah.
Yeah, Ben.
All right, any opposed? If not, we'll move into executive session with our attorneys.
Okay, opening now. Okay, and we all gotta clear the room because and you gotta talk to the lawyer.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
property designation process.
Okay, to summarize, what we discussed in executive session, we discussed, got legal opinions regarding, potential designation of Mauna Kea as a traditional cultural property. We were informed about the status of the OHA versus State of Hawaii lawsuit and discussed, personnel matters. So with that, the announcements that I have are that our next meeting will be on December 14th at 10 a.m. The other announcement that I have, which is not noted but is just came up this morning, is that we received notification from NSF regarding the National Science Foundation about their proceeding with their 106 hearings next year. We don't have any more information than what's included within their notification. They sent out a blast email apparently to a lot of people, notifying people about the 106, the continuation of the 106 process. But like I said, they mentioned that they don't want to interfere with the activities of our authority. We're not exactly sure what activities they're referencing because we don't, right now, we're proceeding along quite well. And I'm not sure how their 106 hearings would interfere with our activities, but nonetheless, it's in the email. You can go to the National Science Foundation, I guess their website. There's that notification should be there. Or if you ask me, I'll be able to send it, forward it to you. All right, any other announcements? If not, if I could get a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Everybody have a happy Thanksgiving and we'll
You
see you
guys too.
on December 14th.
Yeah, thank you. Aloha, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanksgiving. Aloha no.
Aloha. We hope.
Yeah, I'm turning this off.